The moonlight shimmered over the vast ocean, reflecting the silver glow of the Water Kingdom's palace. Queen Naia stood at the balcony, the cool night breeze caressing her dark, flowing hair. Her piercing blue eyes scanned the horizon, troubled by the unease in the air. The sea whispered warnings to her of an approaching storm, but not one born of nature. It was him. King Kael of the Fire Kingdom. A man whose presence burned like the sun itself, whose very name was feared in the Water Kingdom. Their ancestors had been sworn enemies, their elements forever at odds. Water could extinguish fire, and fire could boil water, so how could they ever coexist? Naia tightened her grip on the balcony's edge. She had ruled the Water Kingdom for years, protecting her people from countless threats, but now a force greater than any before was on the rise. Lord Zephyr, the Thunder Warlord, had begun his conquest. His storms had already destroyed the smaller kingdoms to the east, leaving nothing but ruin in his wake. A meeting had been arranged. She and Kael were to discuss an alliance. The thought made her stomach twist, but she had no choice. A sudden surge of heat swept through the air. Naia turned sharply, her eyes narrowing. Flames flickered at the edge of her palace's grand courtyard. The Fire King had arrived. Kael strode through the palace gates, his fiery red cloak billowing behind him. His molten gold eyes flickered in the dim light, scanning the marble halls. He had never set foot in the Water Kingdom before. His people spoke of its queen as a dangerous sorceress, capable of drowning an entire army with a flick of her wrist. But Kael was not afraid of water. He reached the grand throne room, where Naia stood at the center, waiting for him. She was beautiful, but not in the delicate way of the maidens in his court. Her beauty was like the ocean itself, vast, untamed, and powerful. Her gown, made of flowing silk, shimmered like cascading water. "Fire King," she greeted coolly. "Water Queen," he replied, his voice like smoldering embers. Tension crackled between them, as fierce as the clash of their elements. "You know why we are here," Naia said. "Zephyr's forces grow stronger every day. He will come for my kingdom, and yours will be next." Kael crossed his arms. "You assume I fear him." "You should," she said. "Lightning is faster than fire. His storms will swallow your kingdom in an instant." Kael's lips curled into a smirk. "And yet, water conducts electricity. He is a danger to you as well." Naia's eyes darkened. She hated that he was right. "So," Kael continued, stepping closer, "what is it you propose?" She lifted her chin. "An alliance. We fight together to defeat Zephyr. I will not let my kingdom fall, and neither will you." Kael chuckled. "And how do I know this isn't a trick? Water and fire were never meant to mix." "Perhaps not," she admitted. "But together, we may create something stronger." For the first time, Kael hesitated. He had never considered such a possibility. Fire and water opposites in every way. And yet, if she was right, if their powers could merge instead of destroy. Before he could answer, a deafening boom echoed across the sky. The room trembled, and a sudden gust of wind howled through the open balcony. Naia and Kael turned sharply. The storm had arrived. The sky cracked open with a roar of thunder. Winds howled through the Water Kingdom's palace, rattling the glass windows. Naia's heart pounded as she rushed to the balcony, Kael just a step behind her. Beyond the horizon, storm clouds churned violently, twisting like a beast awakening from slumber. Flashes of violet lightning streaked across the sky, illuminating the monstrous figure at the heart of the storm, Lord Zephyr, the Thunder Warlord. His silhouette hovered in the storm's eye, golden eyes glowing through the darkness. The winds around him raged, carrying his booming laughter across the sea. "So, the Queen of Water and the King of Fire think they can stop me?" Zephyr's voice rumbled through the heavens. "Pathetic. I will drown this kingdom in storms, and when I am finished, the fire kingdom will be next. Naia clenched her fists. The ocean beneath them surged in fury, answering her unspoken rage. He's already here, she murmured. We have no time for negotiations. Kael's fingers burned with embers as he summoned his flames. Then we fight. Naia turned to him sharply. You can't just charge into battle. You don't know how his powers work. Kael smirked. Then I learn on the battlefield. Before she could stop him, he leaped off the balcony, flames erupting around him as he landed in the palace courtyard. His warriors, who had accompanied him, immediately fell in line behind him. Hold your ground, Kael commanded. We fight until our last breath. Naia groaned in frustration. Reckless Fire King. But there was no time to argue. The storm was descending fast. She raised her hands, and the ocean responded. Waves surged toward the shore, forming a protective barrier between her kingdom and the storm. Zephyr smirked as he descended onto the palace steps. You think you can hold back the storm, Water Queen? Lightning crackled in his palms. You're nothing but a child trying to stop a hurricane. Naia didn't flinch. She lifted her arms, and tendrils of water shot forward like whips, striking at Zephyr with precise, fluid movements. The moment they connected, however, a violent jolt of electricity surged through them, forcing her to release her hold. Kael dashed forward in a flash of fire, hurling a blazing spear straight at Zephyr. The lightning warlord caught it midair, crushing it effortlessly in his palm. Foolish, Zephyr sneered. Fire is nothing against the storm. Kael's golden eyes burned. Then let's test that theory. He charged forward, flames swirling around his fists. Their battle had begun. The clash of fire and storm. Kael moved with fierce precision, his flames cutting through the raging winds. He struck fast, fists blazing with molten energy, but Zephyr was quicker. The warlord twisted with the wind, dodging each strike with unnatural speed. Lightning arced toward Kael, but he rolled away just in time, the electricity sizzling inches from his skin. He countered with a wall of fire, but Zephyr merely laughed, dispersing the flames with a single gust of wind. Naia watched from the balcony, calculating every movement. Fire alone won't work. Zephyr was too fast, his lightning too unpredictable. If Kael kept fighting like this, he'd lose. She had no choice. Raising her hands, she called upon the ocean. The palace fountains erupted, sending streams of water cascading down toward Kael. He glanced up, eyes widening as the water encircled him. Trust me, Naia called. Kael barely had time to react before the water wrapped around his arms, swirling with his flames. For a moment, steam hissed around him. Then something incredible happened. The fire didn't go out. Instead, it glowed hotter, brighter, blue flames. Kael's smirk returned. Now we are talking. With a newfound force, he lunged at Zephyr, fists wreathed in blue fire. This time, when he struck, the flames didn't falter against the storm. Instead, they cut through it. Zephyr's confident expression faltered. Impossible. Kael grinned. Not anymore. With Naia's water strengthening his fire, they were finally a match for the storm. A battle won, but a war to come. With their combined strength, they pushed Zephyr back. Each strike of fire and water left him struggling to recover. The storm began to wane, and for the first time, the Thunder Warlord looked uncertain. But then, he did something unexpected. He laughed. A chilling, thunderous laugh. You surprise me, Zephyr admitted. I didn't think it was possible for fire and water to work together. But, he grinned, stepping back into the swirling clouds. You're still not strong enough. A bolt of lightning struck the ground between them, forcing Naia and Kael to shield their eyes. By the time they looked again, the Zephyr was gone, his storm retreating into the horizon. The battle was over. For now. Kael exhaled, extinguishing his flames. Well, he said, turning to Naia. That was fun. She rolled her eyes. You're insufferable. And you're bossy. But we fought well together. Kael's smirk softened. Yeah. We did. For a moment, they just stared at each other. The tension between them was still there, but it had changed. There was admiration now. Respect. And something else, something unspoken. Naia turned away, hiding the heat rising to her cheeks. Zephyr will return, she said. We need to train it to prepare. Kael nodded. Then let's start. The storm had passed, but a greater battle loomed ahead. And together they would be ready. Naia stood on the balcony of her palace, watching the waves crash against the cliffs. The battle was over, but Zephyr had escaped. She clenched her fists. He had tested their strength, and next time, he would return stronger. Behind her, Kael approached, the heat of his presence making her skin prickle. You're thinking too much, he said. We barely won today, she replied. Zephyr won't make the same mistakes again. Kael smirked. Neither will we. He lifted a flame in his palm. Our powers aren't supposed to mix, but when they do, he let the fire flicker blue. They are stronger. Naia nodded. We should train. Kael groaned. I knew you'd say that. For days, they pushed their limits, fire and water colliding, emerging, strengthening each other. Kael learned to control his heat so Naia's water wouldn't extinguish it, while Naia discovered that when she let Kael's fire fuel her water, it became scalding steam. Their attacks grew sharper, their bond stronger. One evening, after a long session, they collapsed onto the stone floor, breathless. Kael turned his head toward Naia, his golden eyes softer than usual. You fight like fire, he murmured. She smirked. And you burn like the sea. For a moment, the tension between them shifted, but before either could say more, a deafening crack of thunder split the sky. A storm rolled in unnaturally fast, lightning flashing across the dark clouds. Zephyr's voice boomed through the air. Enjoy your victory while it lasts. The next time we meet, I will bring a tempest so great neither of you will survive. As quickly as it came, the storm vanished. But Naia and Kael knew, this was only the beginning. The night after Zephyr's warning, the air felt heavier, charged with an unseen force. Naia stood on the shoreline, the waves restless beneath her feet. Kael approached, his usual smirk absent. He's coming soon, he said. I can feel it. Naia nodded. Then we must be ready. They trained harder, perfecting their attacks. Naia learned to weave water through Kael's flames, creating searing steam that could blind and burn. Kael shaped his fire into spears, striking with pinpoint accuracy. They moved as one, fire and water no longer fighting but flowing together. Days passed before the storm finally arrived. Black clouds swirled over the water kingdom, lightning crackling like chains in the sky. Then, from the eye of the storm, Zephyr descended. You think you can stand against me? He sneered. Thunder rumbled in response. Naia stepped forward, the ocean rising at her call. We don't think, we know. Kael's flames erupted behind her, their blue light reflecting in his fierce golden eyes. Let's finish this. Zephyr struck fast. A bolt of lightning shot toward them, but Naia threw up a wall of water, absorbing the shock. Kael launched a stream of fire, forcing Zephyr to dodge. The battle raged, wind howling as water and fire clashed against thunder. Then Zephyr unleashed his true power, a storm so great it split the sky. Lightning rained down, the sea churned violently, and the ground trembled. Naia and Kael barely held their ground. "We need to combine our power," Naia gasped. Kael grabbed her hand, heat meeting coolness. "Then let's burn the storm away." Together, they unleashed a surge of scalding steam, fire and water merging into a force unlike any before. The storm weakened, Zephyr staggering as his power was drained. "No," he roared, but it was too late. With one final strike, they sent a wave of fire and water crashing over him, extinguishing his storm once and for all. The sky cleared, the wind died, and silence fell. Naia turned to Kael, breathless. "We did it." Kael grinned, pulling her close. "Told you we were unstoppable." For the first time, Naia didn't argue. Instead, she let herself melt into his warmth. But even as they stood victorious, one thought remained: was Zephyr truly gone? The storm had passed, and the sky stretched wide and clear, but Naia felt no peace. The ocean was still uneasy, waves crashing harder than usual. Kael stood beside her, his golden eyes scanning the horizon. "He's not gone," he murmured. Naia nodded. "I can feel it too." A sudden bolt of lightning struck the sea, and from the swirling waters, Zephyr emerged, weakened but not defeated. His once mighty storm was reduced to flickering sparks around him, his power drained, yet his eyes still burned with hatred. "You think you've won?" Zephyr asked. "I will never fall to you." Kael stepped forward, fire dancing around his fists. "You already have." Naia raised her hands, the ocean surging behind her. "This ends now." Zephyr summoned the last of his strength, a final desperate storm. Lightning cracked wildly, but his power was fading, his control slipping. Kael and Naia moved together, one final attack, fire and water combined. Naia unleashed a towering wave, and Kael struck it with a burst of blue flames, turning it into boiling steam. The scalding mist enveloped Zephyr, cutting off his power, suffocating the storm. With a final, anguished cry, Zephyr collapsed, his body vanishing into the sea. The storm died with him. Silence. Naia exhaled, the tension draining from her body. Kael turned to her, his gaze steady. "It's over." She met his eyes and, for the first time, allowed herself to believe it. The battle was won. As the ocean calmed and the sky cleared, Kael reached for her hand. "Fire and water," he said with a smirk. "Who knew they could be so perfect together?" Naia laughed softly. "Maybe some things aren't meant to fight, but to balance each other." Kael pulled her closer, his warmth melting into her cool presence. "Then maybe we should stop fighting it." As the waves whispered around them and the last traces of the storm faded, Naia and Kael stood together, rulers of fire and water, united at last.